everyone, my name is Antonia, this is PerryPictures, and today we are taking a walk through my collection of graphic novels and comic books. I would like to share with you some of my favorites and recommendations that I think you may enjoy reading. Let me know in the comments if any of these are already on your reading list, already in your collection, or if after watching this video you found something that you are really excited to add to your collection. Jumping right in, we're going to start off with a comic you may already be familiar with if you're an avid art YouTuber, because this one is made by one of the most well-known art YouTubers, and that is Lavender Town. And I actually happen to have 2 copies of her comic, so I am thinking about doing a giveaway for you guys, and I will add at the end of this video how you can participate so that you can win the extra copy I have. I just want to show you a couple of panels, so we're going to go ahead and page through those real quick while I talk to you about why I picked up this book and what it is that I like so much about this artist and the story. In particular, I think that Haley has done such a beautiful job developing her art style. It is extremely unique to her. It makes reading a graphic novel in this style really exciting, really fun, really enjoyable. But the story is good too, and we can oftentimes lose interest in a comic, regardless of the fact that it has really, really beautiful art, if the story just isn't really latching on for us. So I do think that the story that Haley has done is just as beautiful as the artwork itself, and so that's why this is at the top of my list for recommended, and the first one we're talking about in today's video. The next one on the top of the pile is called The Cursed Princess Club, and this one might be familiar to some of you who like to read webtoons, because this is a webtoon original. And when it comes to webtoon, I have a love-hate relationship with webtoon. I am an amateur webtoon artist myself with my own comic, currently in hiatus. I know I need to spend some more time on it. But that said, I absolutely love this webtoon in particular, this one specifically. So please, if you're gonna read any webtoon on the platform, this would be the one. So I believe that this one not only has a really cute art style, the story itself is so beautiful. This is a true love yourself story that doesn't send the wrong messages that we can sometimes accidentally pick up in some of our other webtoons, whereas this story, Cursed Princess Club, truly does. It delivers on the premise, and it gives you characters that you can absolutely love. And the main character, I have to say, by comparison, is not just a passive target of her plot where everything is happening to her, but she is proactively taking action, making choices, and changing the world around her for the better. So she is proactive in her role as the protagonist, and I absolutely love it. One last thing to say about this one, if you enjoy good side characters as well, there are so many amazing side characters in this story to fall in love with as well. So like, 100 out of 10 recommend this webtoon, and definitely worth purchasing the hard copy edition, and I look forward to getting volume 2 because I think I saw that that's coming out soon. So I'm adding that to my collection. This is what I'm going to hold on to for a very long time. Next up is a cult classic, My Hero Academia. I have 2 volumes of this comic, but I will go ahead and come out and be completely forthcoming with you. I have not actually sat down and read these cover to cover because for me it can be a little difficult to watch something and then go back and read it, just because of the time invested in reading a story you already know how it turns out because you've already seen it. So when they make a movie out of a popular book, if I want to read the book, I have to go read it before the movie comes out. Once I see it, it's going to be that much harder, especially with such a busy schedule in my adult life. This is one that I purchased as a fan just because I enjoyed the TV series so much, and I wanted to have the books just to show my support for the franchise. Another one of my top tier favorite graphic novels is Hooky. And I have volumes 1 and 2 here, and I'm looking forward to getting volume 3, so we're going to go ahead and show you some panels from these books. The artwork and story are what make this one so exceptional because the art style, while being incredibly unique to this artist and this story in particular, it's not just the art that has me hooked, it's the story as well. These two twin witches, 12-year-olds Danny and Dorian, are on a quest to make things right between the magical and non-magical worlds, which might be a little bit typical for a Witcher wizard sort of plotline, but the fact that their family is so heavily involved in the evil side of the plot makes it really, really interesting because these children are really running away from and going against all the pressure that they're getting from their familial bonds and upbringing to do the right thing. And I find that it makes for a very, very engaging story. And I want to say, I originally found this story through Pinterest. I saw a couple of panels just by themselves, some singular panels pinned on Pinterest, and I was so in love with the art that I had to find out where it was coming from. And that just did it for me. I was like, I'm in, sold, where do I get it? I love these. I think they are so good and highly, highly, highly recommend. The next 3 books that I have in my hands are part of a series called Mies and Elle. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the covers for each of them. And I believe the artist / author is working on the 4th volume now, and you can read this entire webcomic online on her own website. It's not a webtoon, but it does have its own webcomic website. I just want to talk about this artist, Jenny Clemmings, for a second. Jenny has been one of my favorite artists for years. I started reading this webcomic such a long time ago, and I come back to it every once in a while, and I just love it. I eat them up. They are so good. I think what I love so much about Jenny's art style is honestly the line art. The line weight variation in her line art is so satisfying. It's beautiful. I love it. It's confident. It's gorgeous. And the story is also super unique. It's not like anything else I've read. I can't even think of a story to compare it to say, oh, you know, if you like this, it's like that. I can't think of a story like this one. And when the 4th one comes out, I'm going to buy it too, all the way until the season finale. I'm gonna get the entire collection. I am determined to own this in its entirety, and that is definitely something I want to share with you. So I'm going to even include down in the description the link to the Mies and Elle website, because I believe in this comic so much and I want you to be able to find it and read it with as little barrier to entry as possible. Next, we're going to talk about The Dreamer, and the reason why I've shuffled these a little bit, if you were looking and predicting what was coming next on the pile, I'm gonna keep you on your toes, and we're not gonna go straight through it in order. I have selected this one to share with you next, and I have volumes 1 and 2 here, because just like Mies and Elle, I found this webcomic. Don't know if I mentioned that before, but I found them on DeviantArt, navigated from DeviantArt to their actual web pages. So they have their own unique webcomic web pages. This one is done by Laura Innes, this historical / fantasy romance, and infuses it with some modern day time travel. So I think that you would really enjoy this, especially if you're a fan of like historical time travel pieces, especially if you really like real history. So she really does give you such like an homage to historical figures that really existed, and she doesn't change their stories. She doesn't rewrite history in a way to give them a different ending, but she does include them in such a way that even if you know how their story ends, you can't help but see them all the way through. And I absolutely love, love, love the artwork as well. It's not just story, it's the art. There's such an incredible level of detail in the background art where she shows it just as much love and attention as the characters, and the art's really what grips me first. If I find a webcomic because I saw a panel somewhere or a page somewhere, it's the art, right, that snags you first. You see something, it catches your eye, you want to know more, and then you latch onto the story, and from there you're just a goner. This artist is such an incredible talent that she went on to work on the Amazon original series Invincible. So if you've seen that, you've seen some of the fruits of her labor. So really, really a true professional in the industry, in her field. So check out her work. It's really beautiful, and I've learned so much from reading this series. So I've got 2 in my hands that are unrelated. but they have one thing in common, and that is that these are graphic novels based on novels. Like written out literary novels. So the first one here is a graphic novel called Blue Bloods. You can kind of see that that's a little bit shiny on the cover there. And Blue Bloods is a young adult fantasy series. So they are vampires, but they are vampires who are the wealthy elite. These vampires stay alive for centuries and centuries and centuries through reincarnation. So they live, they die, they reincarnate into the same families. I liked the series. I didn't actually finish it, which is kind of a shame. I should go back and finish reading it, but I sort of got caught up and then torn away from the series for a while. But I enjoyed the series enough to buy at least the first volume of the graphic novel, and Alina is the artist for this book, and I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the pages. I think she did a phenomenal job. She really captured the essence of the story. I felt like it was accurate enough to a story that I was really enjoying at the time to purchase the graphic novel. That said, the other one that I brought out is called The Manual of Aeronautics, and this is the illustrated guide to the Leviathan series. So that is the book series for this one. That was originally another kind of reimagining of history, and I believe this is a reimagining of World War I for the Leviathan series. And it is such a remarkable alternate reality. They call it the Clanker and the Darwinist. And so the Clankers are obviously going to be the revolutionaries, and then the Darwinists are going to be the ones who are doing this biochemical and biological mutations with animals and creating living weapons with those. I'm just a little bit of a history nerd, and I really, really love history, and I love the reimagining and the retelling of history and how things might have been. And so I latched onto this series, and it's so imaginative, right? With like these fantastical reimaginings of like warfare. You can get into it without getting such a heavy heart about like the truth behind all of it, without necessarily dismissing the truth of what happened in history, but also like just kind of like seeing it almost as if it's not real, like if it's another world or another reality. That makes it more digestible, I would say. Even if like you're not interested necessarily in the Manual of Aeronautics or looking through sort of the blueprints of the authors, really ingenuity, I definitely do recommend the books. So if you came here for graphic novel and comic recommendations, but you're also going to walk away with some YA novel series referrals as well between this one and Blue Bloods, but most especially. I would pick this back up and reread it today because I do believe this book series is just that good. Speaking of steampunk and Steve revolutions, we are going to take a look at this one because it is called Girl Genius, and this is another steampunk graphic novel. This one is volume 1. Even if you're not able to purchase the hard copy versions, you can still read these online, and I will also link the website to this down below. This is such a great series. The story and the artwork is just so different than anything else that I've recommended so far, and I think it has a very old school kind of aesthetic and feel. It reminds me a lot of like comic strips that you would see in a newspaper perhaps, but then the color that they add to it really brings it to life. And so there's just so much going on in this story and in these pages too. And if you really just like mad scientists, if you really enjoy steampunk as an aesthetic, I really recommend this story. So we've talked about a lot of graphic novels so far, and I do want to take a step back from those for just a moment so we can go over a couple of comic books, because I do have some comic books in this pile that I would like to share with you, especially considering a lot of what we've gone through has been very much in the supernatural or the historical kind of genre, and that is not the only thing I have to recommend here for you guys. I also like to dabble in other themes and in other genres, and to that point I would like to introduce you to a couple of comics that I have collected that are horror themed. So if horror is not for you, that's okay, because we're going to circle back around to other things, but I do want to introduce you to some of my comics that are in the horror genre. Now the first one we're going to look at is called Animosity, and this is what the cover looks like. This is volume 1 of Animosity, and I was blown away by this comic book. It is so good, the art is so good, the story is so interesting. And the premise is that all the animals just one day woke up and were able to speak, and they have very strong opinions about the human race, and so they basically just go on this complete like vengeance fueled attack against humanity. It's like all of animal kind is attacking people, and then you have this very loyal dog who is protecting his young human friend, this little girl. The artwork itself is really stunning. I mean, there's this tiger in here that is just gorgeous but terrifying at the same time. Everything is just so good, but also so graphic. If your stomach turns with a little bit of war, this probably isn't for you. But if you do have an interest in that and you think that story sounds interesting, I do recommend Animosity. I do want to pick up the rest of the volumes in this series. It made me interested in the rest. Continuing with the horror genre, I've got a very special treat for you here. This one is called Zombie Chiefs. I'm not going to be able to recommend you buy this because it's not for sale, but it is my first original comic, and I'm going to show you a couple of pages from this. I made this comic series while on deployment using an iPad back in 2010. So this is a very old art, very old comic, but it's based on my imagination and my experience in the Navy. And so I really hope that you enjoy this little sneak peek at a piece of my personal history and my origin story in the comic sphere. As an artist myself. Who knew that horror would be my very first foray into comic art? But there we have it. That's the way I started. The next four that I have to show you are also indie comics by an indie comic creator, and when I was getting into making Zombie Chiefs myself, I became very curious about the indie comic space, and I started looking into other artists who were kind of doing the same thing. And one of the ones that I found that I really latched onto and I originally discovered through DeviantArt is Shadows of Oblivion by Sean McCauley, and I'm going to show you in a minute all of the, not all of the, but some of the interior pages. He also offered, as part of like his launch, to do original art for some of the covers of the first so many copies that were sold. So I was able to request that he drew BB along with another character from my Zombie Chiefs comic. I asked for the characters from my young adult series that I had written, or the final issue that I had ordered from Sean McCauley. And if you don't know about that, now you know. I wrote 2 books in a young adult series. If you just look inside at some of the artwork of the actual story for Shadows of Oblivion, you're gonna see a mixture of really detailed graphic novel and chibi style art. I really am blown away that this comic creator with all this skill and all this talent was launching and hosting and developing and printing all of his own comics independently. So if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. Let's take a quick sidestep over here into some television adaptation territory. We have a couple of books in this collection that you might recognize if you are a fan of the TV shows that these were adapted from. So we have The Guild, definitely a fantastic mini-series about video gamers, so kind of like WoW players who classically take on the lives of their avatars, and they're sort of like living this duality of real world versus video game world. And I thought it was a really fun series. I was a really big fan, and so as a gift, when my husband saw that they were making a comic adaptation, he got this for me. And I super appreciate it, and it kind of makes me want to go back and rewatch the show. I do have 2 of the books that were adapted from the TV series. These aren't just retellings of the show as we saw it on TV, but rather a continuation of their story. They are an extension of the original series, and so if you ever felt terrible about them canceling the show, which basically everybody feels that way, you can go check out the rest of their story in graphic novel form. I know that we did get the movie Serenity to help tie up some loose ends, but for the rest of the characters who were not in the movie, we have some books to see where the rest of them ended up. And just one more. All the same things I just said about the rest of the Serenity still applies to this. This is Firefly. Firefly was the name of the TV show. Serenity was the name of the movie. If you haven't seen them, check them out. cult classics, amazing, so underrated, so underappreciated, but also fanatically loved by audiences everywhere once they do see and are exposed to the show. So check them out. And then if, like me, you can't let go of the series, they have graphic novels to continue the story. As you may have already noticed, not everything in my collection was something that I picked out and purchased, but all of them are beloved, and these are no exception. These are some comic books from a series called Princeless, and these are pirate themed. I spent 10 years writing in a play-by-post steampunk RPG world as a steampunk pirate. You definitely hit the nail on the head when you purchase these for me, and I'm going to show you some of the artwork in here. I haven't read past these 2 volumes that I have in my hands, but I'm pretty convinced that it continues onward, so there is more, and the artwork is really pretty. I mean, the colors really do it. They really help it to pop off the page. If this is your jam, if you're really into steampunk and pirates, these are really fun stories. The next we're gonna look at is this one called The Meek, and this is just one issue in the series from this phenomenal artist who's created such a unique character and atmosphere. Angora has been sent on a quest alone in the jungle with only a few cryptic words from her grandfather to guide her. She must embark on a journey to the center and avoid dangers which threaten to end her adventure before it even begins. By Deershing Helmer. I believe that the story is super unique. I think that the artwork is very similar to another YouTube artist who I really enjoy and recently discovered, who's also a graphic novelist and has her own beautiful artwork. But I think what really drew me to her when I saw her work for the very first time was how much it reminded me of Helmer's artwork in this comic. That other artist's name is Star, and her YouTube handle is The Starfish Face, and she is the author of the story Cast Off. I do not have Cast Off in print simply because it's not in print yet, but you can bet once it is, I'm definitely buying it. So The Starfish Face, Star, if you're watching this, just know you've got a customer ready. I'm already lining up at the door. I cannot wait to have a copy of your comic. And if you are seeing this, might I suggest you check out The Meek? To everybody else. The Meek by Helmer and Cast Off, please do check them both out. Last indie comic that I'm going to show you, because they did a nice, really just fancy print here, but this is Elysian Fields. This was a Kickstarter comic that I backed. I believe they are posting another Kickstarter. If it's not in the description, it's already ended. This is also sort of based a little bit on historical figures. I'm a sucker for these historical retellings. I love seeing everyone's individual take on sort of our heroes of old, these stories that come from our history and how someone chooses to illustrate that and share that vision with us is always really interesting, and that is one of the reasons why I chose to back this. It's one of the reasons why I'm sharing it with you now, because I think that the artist and author did a commendable job with this retelling. So we're back to graphic novels here. This one is interesting because this is a Peter Pan retelling. The reason why I have this book is because I am a massive Peter Pan fan. I absolutely love the stories. I love the movies, all of them, all of the movies. This is just another look at that story through another person's vision. The artwork is kind of dark. It has this very serious tone, which you're not really expecting from Peter Pan. I don't think you're gonna get the warm and fuzzies from this one, so it's a great new perspective on a tried and true story, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Second to last, I am very briefly going to show you this one. This is massive. As I'm sure you can tell, this is a huge book, and that's because it is the Action Bible. And full disclosure, I have not read the entire thing. I've been able to read through it piecemeal and pick out like the stories that I want to check out, and like, again, with anything else that I've said today about familiar stories being envisioned in a new way with a different person's perspective or style, because I know some of these stories, I grew up with some of these stories, and it's just really interesting to see how somebody would draw them. So I did say second to last, which means I have one more to show you. And this is going to be kind of a plug for this channel, because On the weekend, I illustrate comics with you guys. We collaborate on stories. And if you haven't seen that yet, I do keep a schedule on my community tab, so check out the community tab to see when I'm streaming. We work on our own comics together, and I make characters with you guys live in chat, and we add them to our comic. We have done quite a handful of pages already in previous streams. We are still working on coloring some of the most recent pages. This is all community comic creation, and I appreciate working with you guys. I think it's a really fun exercise for all comic book lovers. This is a really fun way to get involved and to work together, and so if you're interested in joining me in some comic creation in the future, that is a great way to do it. Just hop over to my community tab, check out my streaming schedule, and I will see you there. If you would like to enter to win the spare copy I have of Unfamiliar by Lavender Town, make sure to join me on stream, because that is where I will do a raffle to give away that copy. If you liked this video or any of the comments that I recommended, please give it a thumbs up and check out the description to find out more about those stories. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because we are making more art and animation and comic content on this channel all the time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. And that's everything. Okay? Bye.